Okay, hello back from your lunch break. Now we have Tim again with his talk about ways to study abroad. And as always, if you have any questions, just raise your hand or use 420.de/questions. Du bist dran.
No, check. Ja, besser. So, leider. Unfortunately, I ran out of energy. Huh? Unfortunately, I ran out of energy. Let me check. Ja, oder das? Ja, was? Nee, er ist tot.
Nicht verwechseln, aber... Eigentlich? Der? Also eigentlich habe ich zwei.
Noch einen dritten? Geil.
Moment. Wenn du ihn hast.
Ja. Nachfolgende Züge verspäten sich um etwa 5 Minuten.
Okay, der hier.
Cool. Wie war das genaue Wording, wie ich in meiner Zivilrechts 1 Vorlesung mal erfahren habe? Hast du mal einen Präsenter, bedeutet, wir haben einen Kauf abgeschlossen quasi. Für 0 Euro. Will jemand einen Präsenter günstig kaufen? Egal. Nach wohin? Unten? Unten. Check. Eins, so, ja. Okay. Für die Lippenleser unter uns. Alright. Alright. Raucher. Alright. Welcome again. It's me. It's Mario. No. The talk now is on studying abroad. And I already mentioned a few bullet points in the talk earlier today. And let's directly start. There's no overview now because it's a very short talk, so essentially more room for questions later on. So, but why staying abroad? That should be probably the first question, right? So why staying abroad at all? Specifically probably for the international students who actually are staying abroad here in Darmstadt in Germany. Interesting choice, but it's your decision. So anyways, anyhow, as I already mentioned earlier, specifically if you want to go into research or into academia specifically, it's almost mandatory nowadays to gather intercultural competencies. And the easiest way for the same is to have a stay abroad during your studies, right? What will you get out of a stay abroad, potentially? Well, you will gain insight in a different culture. That's always a benefit, always nice. More experience how different university systems work. That's probably crucial for the German students if they want to go into an academic career on international base, right? Completely different processes, structures, and whatever. And last but not least, of course, you will improve your language skills, right? Which is always a benefit if you apply for any job nowadays, specifically in computer science. And depending on the possibility you go for, you will extend the content, for example, you can conduct via a stay abroad, because other partner universities offer different content or similar content, but in a different way. And that, of course, helps to deepen the understanding, first of all, if you go into the same area, or to broaden your expertise by conducting other courses, for example. So, to wrap it up a bit, going abroad is definitely a good idea. Yet, there are not that many possibilities, to be honest, at least offered by our department or the university, because the most essential possibility is to just go abroad for 1 or 2 semesters via regular exchange program. So currently possible in more than 30 countries, more than 80 partner universities on different level, almost all possibilities besides very, very few ones for masters, limited to masters several times actually. You can either go for 1 or probably 2 semesters, depending on the contract, the agreement, and so on. And in most partner universities, you will find a somewhat suitable amount of English taught courses. The first drawback, in our department at least, is that a lot of students drop by, I want to go abroad, but in an English-speaking country. At the moment, we do have possibilities in Australia, in New Zealand, only for bachelors in Wales, no in England, no in Scotland, no in Ireland. We do have a few in Canada and the US. So essentially, forget about the idea of going into an English-speaking country. More interesting is the language of instruction, English, right? And then, of course, depending on the country, you will get around with English easier or probably not that easy. Right? That might be a decision worth to take. Anyhow, besides the regular exchange programs, we do have double degrees. And that's only half true, because we're at the moment on our way to renew the double degree contracts because we changed our study programs. And double degree programs are bound onto specific degrees. At the moment, there's the possibility to go abroad for a double degree with the TU Vienna, for example, in the IT security program, but the contract is still depending based on the IT Sicherheitsprogramm we offered earlier. So there may be some minor changes, but they are willing to do almost everything. We talked to them at a fair. We are actually almost done with the new drafts with Grenoble, Politecnico di Torino, Lyon. The next step would be Aalto University, Eurocom, and IITs in India, Madras and Mumbai. And then whatever drops by. It takes a bit to finalize those contracts because one has to fulfill legal-based rules in both countries and whatsoever. I can't finally state which double degrees will be available for application in November. So Grenoble, definitely. Trento, Turin, definitely. Aalto, probably. Lyon, most likely. All the other ones, I don't know. Right? So, what's the benefit of a double degree? Well, the double degree is, first of all, a quite good idea. You have a regular exchange. You study sometime at your home university, sometime at the partner university. At the end, you conduct a thesis supervised by both partner universities, and you get both degrees. So, first of all, it sounds totally cool. On the other hand, if you can stay abroad at the same partner university on a regular exchange for 2 semesters, what's the benefit? Well, the benefit is that at the end, you get both degree certificates. And the thesis is co-supervised. And that's it. So in real life, not that much of a benefit. So if we can't manage to finalize double degree contracts, just go for a regular exchange as long as possible for the same university. Almost the same additional competency you can gather. Almost. Not identical, but almost. Right. It should improve your chances in the international job market, labor market, yet comes down to the specific country. It is definitely helpful to have a diplôme d'ingénieur in France. But there is no double degree anymore for the diplôme d'ingénieur. So, you will get another master's degree. Whether this is really helpful in France, I don't know. And I highly assume the colleagues from France don't know either. Let's see. Not so much benefit probably if you have a master's degree from Austria and one from Germany. But they deliver a certificate stating that it's equivalent to a diploma, which I really fancy because I'm a diploma computer scientist. So think about it. If you can't manage to finalize a double degree in due time, the fallback solution is anyways to transfer all the past credits back to your home university here and finalize your degree here. So there's also not really big of an issue occurring if something goes wrong. Have an eye on the double degrees. More updates on our websites, and the information fair somewhat in the summer term, most likely. There was the so-called Future Leader Scholarship Program. It's currently paused, but let's be honest, Continental announced that they will reduce their work back to tires solely, and then they most likely don't need any more students in the automotive security area or autonomous driving area to work in Japan. So I think this program is actually not given in the future anymore, but maybe Continental is surprising me. Essentially, this was a very specific program where you had to conduct a semester research at the IIS in Tokyo. That's the biggest Japanese research institute with 940 PIs, roughly. And then afterwards, half a year internship at Continental Japan. Nothing out of that was possible to be transferred back. So essentially, extending your duration of studies by almost a year, but of course gaining very specific additional competencies. There are from time to time such specific exchange possibilities. Have an eye on the central websites as well for the International Relations Office in our websites. Sometimes something like that also for an interim period of time pops up. In that case, you have to think about whether you want to speed up your studies probably more or gather these additional competencies. There is no right or wrong here. It's just a different way to gather competencies. As you're studying in the federal state of Hesse, there's also the so-called Hessen-Programme. They do have possibilities in Australia and New Zealand. And you can apply with all Hessian students. Quite decent chances to get one of the places as a TU computer science student, at least in the past, when you have an eye on the quota. The application for the Hessen-Programme is not based on the department. You have to apply directly at the International Relations Office, as well get advisory from them, actually. You still need some kind of learning agreement, I think, and probably recommendation letters and whatever. If you need something like that, of course, let us know. All right, so double degree, specific programs, Hessian program, regular exchange, and of course, just go away. Free moving. Not every university in the world accepts free movers, but a lot do. You have to have an eye on the costs, of course, then, because the benefit of a regular exchange program with an agreement is that you don't have to pay the general fees. You may still have to pay course fees, material fees, whatsoever, but the big fees, like in the US, for example, or UK, are dropped. And it might be different if you go as a free mover to some university, but for example, members of the Studienstiftung Deutsches Volk, for example, can get a scholarship for a stay abroad, up to 10,000 plus euros. We had students in our department who went for MIT or Stanford for a semester as free movers, but you have to afford it, right? Not really much help from the university or the department here. Regardless, the transfer of credit is exactly the same. It's an accredited university. If you can fetch a transcript with courses matching into your degree, you will get the credits. So that might be an interesting way to extend the possibilities also on shorter note. As I mentioned earlier today already, otherwise you have a 1 or 1.5 year lead time for your stay abroad. Self-organized could be way shorter when it comes down to the lead time, but not necessarily. Asia, for example, at least eastern part of Asia a lot, and North America, they do have only one application period for the whole academic year. Always somewhat in spring. So therefore, you have to apply for spring also if you want to go out next winter or the summer term after, and the application period for next winter and the summer after is already done. They're probably still running currently. But that might be an option. Internships research as well. You can conduct an internship. As I explained earlier in my talk, we won't accept sheer internships in industry for your studies. Yet, of course, again, like the Future Leader Scholarship Program, other competencies gathered, right? And you can actually get funding for some of those possibilities. There's the Deutscher Akademischer Austauschdienst, DAAD. They do have a website. They are essentially the ones funding your stay, if there are scholarships available, also for Erasmus Plus Europe. And they do offer a lot of internship possibilities on their websites as well. There's a whole database. If you stay abroad via this Erasmus Plus internship program in the Erasmus Plus area, so Europe essentially, at a HEI, a so-called higher educational institution, you can actually get the same scholarship as a student who goes abroad for 1 or 2 semesters via a regular exchange program. Way shorter lead time. Can be combined with your thesis probably. So if your supervisor for the thesis knows someone in Finland, Sweden, Netherlands, Italy, whatsoever, probably it's possible to be just away for a few weeks and work in a research group at another university, get the same funded, and you can write it down in your CV as an exchange possibility. Might be an option, right? If you need any help identifying good opportunities, gathering recommendation letters, not sure how to translate something probably, whom to get in touch with, always get in touch with us and we can hopefully help you, right? Not in any case, but at least we can tell you we're not responsible and whom to get in touch with. So that's the minimum we can do. All right, any questions already on the different types of programs? Cool. So, but in order to prepare your potential stay abroad in the best way possible, you should definitely ask yourself the right questions at the right time. When is the best time for you personally for a stay abroad? It's an individual decision. Probably you want to gather credits for your studies, probably you don't care, probably just makes sense to go abroad because you have relatives in a specific country and they have a big birthday party coming up in 2 years or whatsoever. So it might be a completely individual point, right? When is the best time for me to stay abroad? When can I apply for the specific stay abroad I want to go for? Different application periods, Hessen-Programme, regular exchange programs, DAD internships, and so on and so forth, right? My recommendation usually is figure out all the possibilities for you, create a time schedule. When's the first application period for the first possibility and so on, and then you can actually try to go for everything and the first thing matching, just go. Otherwise, you will probably lose some options. What's your personal interest for a stay abroad? Closely related, of course, to the question whether you want to gather credits, but also, what am I aiming for after my studies? If you want to be a professor at some point, go for a research stay rather than a regular exchange, probably. If you want to go into research but not into academia, probably research-related industry internship, and so on and so forth, right? So depending on your goals set for during and after the studies, it might make a difference for the stays abroad, useful and helpful for you. What do I need to fulfill for a stay abroad? We often get applications for a stay abroad, for example, fixed on master's level, from bachelor students in the 3rd semester. That's an automatic no. You can apply for 5 possibilities during the application period. If you apply for random bullshit, you're reducing that, right? So what do you need to fulfill for the specific stay abroad possibility you want to go for? Is there any support given at all? A stay abroad for 1 semester in the US roughly leads to 10,000 to 12, 15,000 euros. including the flight, accommodation, living expenses in general, and whatever. Of course, reduce that by the amount of living expenses here, and then you have the diff, right? It's costly. Not in every country the same, but it's costly. Calculate it through before you apply. You can usually get out of any acceptance or whatever for a possibility, but of course, probably you're taking away the possibility for some other student. So if it's somewhat okay and you will most likely be able to fund your stay abroad, go for it. If you already know that you can't afford it, go for something else. Probably some paid position, right? So, which support and scholarships are available? And of course, is there anything formal that I need to fulfill, like a specific language certificate? US, again, IELTS, TOEFL, and Duolingo in Illinois. They do offer regular certificates. I didn't know that till 2 years ago as well. Duolingo offers in test centers regular language certificates. Not only this clicky app, whatever, bullshit. Anyhow. And if you answered all these questions, you should somewhat be prepared to follow the process later on. Because those are questions actually to prepare and identify the right possibility and process before you actually take your first action, right? So that's, should I move less? Should I move more? All right. So the next deadline for the application period is end of November this year for all possibilities for regular exchange. The Future Leader Scholarship and the Hessen programs have an earlier deadline. Why? Because if you apply for a Hessen program and you get not selected in the first selection procedure, you can still follow the application period, the application process for the regular exchange programs. So 2 possibilities in the same time frame. And Future Leader Scholarship most likely not given anymore. That's just because probably on the slides. There is an interim application period for the leftover places for Erasmus Plus happening in May. We usually get the possibilities by the International Relations Office shortly before the application period starts. So 2-3 weeks before, probably. It can then be found, the list of possibilities with few extra additional information we do have, can be found then on our website and outside of our office, D115. Always large printout with a lot of possibilities in November. In May, not so much. Very shorter. Have an eye on that, drop by in a consultation hour for exchange affairs, look up the websites. There's also a partner database on the central websites. Make sure to filter correctly. Just because it's a partner university of TU Darmstadt doesn't necessarily mean that you as a computer science students can actually go abroad to this partner university. You can apply though, but the students from the other departments come first. So only if they don't provide their possibilities to their own students, and we are the first ones asking for the possibility, you may get a possibility from another department, but then you may be forced to take courses of this area. So if you apply, for example, for mechanical engineering possibilities, not a good recommendation, because they usually provide all their possibilities to their own students. It may be the case that you have to conduct mechanical engineering courses while staying abroad. In some other countries, there is no restriction whatsoever. And sometimes it comes down to the specific university. So therefore, the partner database. Filter, look up the countries or the universities you're interested in. There are fact sheets linked and experience reports from previous students being there. You will gather a lot of information via the fact sheets and the experience reports. Specifically the fact sheets, living expenses, links to the partner websites to identify course offers, for example. Some more information about language courses required, language certificates required, and so on and so forth. Thing is, in German, it's easy to state. In German, the department leads to Fachbereich. Fachbereich, Fachliches. So the department responsible for the subject-specific parts of everything. Content, structure of our own programs, advisory to our own programs, the exams from our courses, and so on, whatsoever. Everything else, someone else is responsible. For example, the International Relations Office. Language certificates, funding, specific thingies, international relation. Transfer of credits department, recommendation letters from the department, and so on and so forth, right? That's what I said in the morning. Make sure to know whom to get in touch with in order to get your answer as fast as possible. Oh damn, I should have changed that. Outdated slide. We're not using the Hessen box anymore. Besides, there is a new version, Nextcloud something, I don't know, already introduced. I'm not sure whether you can actually access the old version anymore anyways. Anyhow, there is an application tool. My computer science heart is bleeding. There is an application tool on the websites of the central facilities, linked somewhere. Move on. And you have to upload all the necessary documents there. Department-specific list of documents required. In general, of course, the application form itself, while conducting it, automatically generated. If all transcripts, to be honest, for achievements not conducted at TU Darmstadt. I have full access to the Toucan backend, and I can print out every transcript of students at TU Darmstadt. I don't need your papers. Not at all, right? So, but all external transcripts, where we don't have access to, we definitely need that for the ranking and the selection procedure. A CV, in any form, a plan of studies, and a motivational letter. Why? Because we need to force you to think about a few things before you actually apply for a specific possibility. Like, do they actually offer courses in my area of studying? Just an example, a few years ago, the Universidad Carlos III in Madrid, Spanish university, it was possible for computer science students to go abroad to this university, but only in the area of automation. Awesome for people studying autonomous systems and robotics, for example, but not so much for every other study program. They eased the rules now, so since 2 years you can actually go abroad there as a computer science students, just take their computer science courses. But beforehand, we had applications from IT security, for example, who wanted to stay abroad at this university because it's Spain. And then they joined the other university, and then actually it came to their mind, oh, I can't select any course I can transfer back. So we need you to have at least a slight overview of the partner university. That's the plan of studies. We will explain that later on in more detail, or if you have questions, just drop by. And the motivational letter is, why do I want to go abroad? Why do I want to go abroad in a specific region or a country? Why do I want to go abroad to a specific university? And if you create both in a good way, you won't run into any potential issues with a stay abroad. All right. Okay. So the question is, specifically, for example, in autonomous systems robotics, which is an interdisciplinary study program, consisting also electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and sometimes the content is adjusted to a different department, faculty, institute at the partner university. Unfortunately, it's a decision of the partner university, and there are 3 categories. First category, exchange students are free to take any course offered regardless of the offering department, faculty, or whatever. Second option, you have to take a specific amount of courses or credits from your home department, and additionally you can take courses from a bunch of offered lectures, courses, whatsoever. And the third option is you're completely limited down to the department you got nominated from. They changed that without letting us know. That's one of the reasons why you have to have an eye on your own. As I said, over 80 partner universities in our department alone, we can't keep track. Sometimes it depends on the countries, more likely on the specific universities, to be honest. But we learned that if you ask politely whether you could take an additional course or something extra from another department, it's most likely possible. Probably not the whole bunch of courses you want to go for. Right? And computer science is also included in our study program, so the worst case is you have to stick with computer science while staying abroad. Any other questions at the moment? Okay. Where to gather more information? Well, we do have websites. I'm not sure whether I already mentioned the same. There's a specific subsection, international. Outgoings, incomings. You will be outgoings, probably. So this is the most interesting section of the international sub-websites. Of course, ask your questions via email and hope for an answer. Drop by during the consultation hours, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And of course, there are informational events offered by the International Relations Office. That's the so-called Go Out campaign. I think it has already started, but most events will be happening during the summer semester, as well as an informational event by the department itself. And we will add more information on specific bullet points or whatever on our websites as well, from time to time. All right. That was staying abroad at a glance, in a nutshell, probably. And whoop. Back. That's a tidied up desktop, actually. Usually you can't see anything from the background picture anymore on my desktops, because I reject another monitor. I'm old school. Really old school. From my personal point of view, a good computer scientist needs a pen and a paper. The first 2 years of my studies, I didn't even own an own computer. And at the moment, I even don't own an own computer. Because why? Devil's work, right? Any questions on, I was told to just do a bit of storytelling if I have some spare time left, so I'm just making fun of myself. Never. Any other questions related to Darmstadt, computer science here, the history of TU Darmstadt? I'm here since many years now. It has been the lowbrow. Then there were some issues with the motorcycle club I don't want to mention. But voices say it might change back to being good again. Punk, metal, rock, smokers pub. I'm a smoker. I can name a lot of smoking pubs. Kessel, for example. Really good shots. Don't go for the chili vodka. Saure. I can recommend Saure. It's a very common shot in Darmstadt, actually. Pillhuhn, also smoker pub. Essentially everything with rock music. Punk. Dumpf, for example, also smokers club. Wait, is there any non-smoking club or pub I can recommend? It's always a good idea to drop by in the Schlosskeller from time to time. Definitely. Some good location. Managed by the AStA, I think. So it's an offer from students to students. That's definitely something good. I can, from time to time, recommend the Krone. When I started going to the Krone, I was 14 years old, so some things have changed in the meantime. But there are good parties. If you're into Gothic music, October 25th, 4 different stages of Gothic music, for example. Very crowded the last time in March, I have been told. Besides, yeah, it's actually almost only smoking. Café Hess, for example, owned by a friend of mine. That's also a nice location. Anything else? Bands, music scene, something? Deutschlandstipendium. That's an interesting question. I have no clue. Deutschlandstipendium nur einmal im Jahr, ne, Bewerbung? Yeah, only once a year. Responsible is Jens Geise. He's located downstairs, across my office, actually. And he's in the office right now. So probably ask him. All right. All right, so that might be interesting probably in the future for some other students as well. The question was, I'm interested in a bit different study programs, actually a lot different, but they were German taught. But a lot of courses are English taught inside. Can I still switch? No. Unfortunately, no. Regardless, actually, legal base, a German taught program has to be conductible completely in German. An English taught program has to be conductible completely in English. But there may be offers of a different language as well. The language certificate is only required for the enrollment. And if you don't have a suitable language certificate, you can't enroll in the respective program, unfortunately. What you can do, you can go for German courses now in the next 1 or 2 semesters, take courses that are also part of the study program you want to change to. As soon as you conducted the language certificate, apply for the change of studies, change, and transfer the past credits. Up to 1 or 2 semesters, usually not really big of a loss or no loss at all of credits. After 2 semesters, the loss will grow bigger because the structures are different to each other. In the department, yeah, bachelor's, master's, and whatever. Okay, the question is, do we have numbers, how many students are enrolled in different masters? Yes, but that actually doesn't play a role at all. Why? Because we're offering courses in different programs at the same time. So what's the benefit of having this number? Not really much. All computer science students from the generic bachelor's master programs can go for the same groups for a thesis, for example. They will probably be sitting in the same lectures. They will apply for the same possibilities as seminars or labs. So that with our structure here at TU Darmstadt in the Department of Computer Science, this number of specific enrollments in one study program really doesn't make sense at all. Anyhow, autonomous systems robotics this semester, roughly 30 freshmen, IT security 50 to 100, somewhere in between. Master informatic German taught, I don't know. Artificial intelligence machine learning 150 roughly. And I missed the computer science. I don't have the number by heart now. But that's roughly. And roughly 500 freshmen in the masters this semester in total. Ja, mit dem Deutschen. When Carsten actually presented his slides, I was a bit astonished about the 4,000. And this number is really outdated by now. So I looked up the back end of Tucan, how many students are actually enrolled in our master's degrees, and it was 4,450 something in total. In department, sorry. All right. Any other question? There's a question. How much is the? Was Uni?
There isn't actually, to my knowledge, a department hoodie. There's a TU Darmstadt Hoodoo. You can get it in the Karo 5. You will see it in the Uni Rally probably more tomorrow. It's about 30 euros, I believe.
When I started my studies, everyone was just wearing black and metal t-shirts. Just go for that. We're in computer science, I mean. We were called cellar children because no sun, a lot of computer, only black clothes. That's the uniform, probably. But yeah, there are, and there's also from the Discord, from the Geek Hub, there are some clothes or whatever. So.
And of course, if you help in any future Ophase, you'll get an Ophasen merch.
Probably we should create something like I Survived Department of Computer Science at TU Darmstadt or something. The best coffee. Oh, there are so many good locations. Is Coffea still? If you want to buy coffee from the area around for you at home, Wacker Coffee, for example, from Frankfurt, really good brand. There is some local brands of coffee. Probably don't go for them, right? In the inner city, Coffea, for example, but there are some other coffee bars and whatever where you can get real good coffee, actually, right? Here at TU Darmstadt, if it has not changed, Department of Architecture, Lichtwiese. The students actually bought their own fancy coffee machine like 15, 20 years ago, and I think they still sell coffee. That was my time when I was still commuting a bit as a student and whatever, way the best coffee at the university itself. Here in the department, Students' Council coffee during the orientation days, probably. Any other questions? Not coffee related, probably. All right, thanks for the attention. If you have any questions later on, just let me know or us know, right? Have a nice day. See you tomorrow at latest.
Right. Leon, mach mal eine Modfolie.
So.
Okay. So this is it for the day, mostly for the organizational stuff, I would say. Now we make a 10-minute break, and afterwards there will be the lightning round talks. We invited 3 different speakers from 3 different research areas, and they will present their group and will talk a bit about their research. And afterwards we will have the get-together and the city tour, which is in the LZE. But now we'll make a 10-minute break until 2:30.
microphone. Good.
All right. Yeah. Welcome back to the lightning round talks. We will start off with Professor Kerstin, who's the head of the AI ML lab.
Good. Cool. So welcome to TU Darmstadt. And my honor today is to tell you a bit more about AI and in particular what we are doing within the research field of AI at TU Darmstadt. So roughly speaking, and that's what you will learn when you start doing your research here. So one thing you will learn is that you can learn no matter what your environment is doing and how much noise there is. Okay, so what you will learn is that AI is a bit like the question of computer programs that simulate, capture intelligent behavior. Now, what is an algorithm? You will also learn. It's maybe enough to say if you don't know it, it's like a bit like a cooking recipe, but be careful because if you cook, typically you get different outcomes every time you start cooking. That's what we don't want to have for algorithms. But apart from that, it's very similar because it tells you how to produce something. Now here we want to get cooking recipes for intelligent behavior. Intelligent behavior can be anything that you can imagine to be smart. Learning, reasoning, maybe how to store knowledge, how to conclude, draw conclusions from knowledge and so on. Now, what can you do with that? So here's one thing that we enjoyed quite a lot. We can stop here. So what we did is we used one of the current transformer models and we tried to compose music based on what we had as information data from Wagner. Why Wagner? Wagner is a bit a critical person, right? I mean, on the one hand, you can feel like what a stupid guy who thinks he's superior to others and maybe even a race is superior to others. On the other hand, if we could show that even a machine could be better than him, maybe we show something about all this bullshit some people in the world think. So that was a bit the idea, but if you have listened, it doesn't sound like Wagner at all. So we are far, far away. It's still not bad, but definitely not Wagner. Anyhow, by now, people like Terence Tao, Fields medalist, so it's a bit like the Nobel Prize for mathematics. He believes that mathematics will not be done anymore with just pen, pencil, and paper, danke, but actually will be done by having little assistants next to you that try to help you with proofs. So if a Fields medalist is thinking that way, Then also last year was very special because actually 2 Nobel Prizes went to AI-ish, at least research. So one directly for AI and one, you may say, using AI, depending on how you want to see it. But no matter whether you believe in Nobel Prizes, I guess it's fair to say that if you use AI in a responsible way, it can at least help us humans, to meet some of the biggest challenges that we are facing. And you may help in climate change because you have maybe a system that can read all the different papers that may get connections where humans maybe have problems getting the connections. But also, what about fragile supply chains? And what I think is most pressing for Germany is what about expert shortage? I mean, in 5, 4, I don't know, 6 years, I guess you go and want to get something from a, how's it called, Amt, from an official place. Who will do the job for you? Already now, you have to wait maybe 2 years for some of the things you're asking for. So what is the driving force in AI? It's a very simple idea in the end. It's about intelligence. Being smart is a matter of size. Maybe the only matter of size, right? The larger, the more data, the larger the model, the larger the compute, the better intelligence emerges. All of a sudden, pop, we have something very, very smart. And we also contribute a bit to that. So here in Darmstadt, we are, at least for now, the only public place, public university that has a decent compute infrastructure for AI. And we are actively, as I will argue, try to reduce, however, in the long run, to reduce the energy consumption in there. But we contributed to some of the models. One of them is maybe the Leo language model, where we took Llama 2 back in the days, and then we continuously pre-trained. So we took additional German data and keep training, and with that, we try to get a system that is better in speaking German language. And then you can ask things like, wofür ist die Informatik an der TU Darmstadt bekannt? You get something that is actually not too far off, but you would have to keep it SOTA by always retraining or providing new information. So now, Darmstadt is also special because actually AI is not just about machines. That's fun. But it's also about you. It's about understanding that what we humans are doing is maybe not much different in terms of using similar algorithms. Maybe we in the end use different algorithms, but we may use similar principles to behave smart. And this is what other people also started in the beginning, saying something like, maybe it's even that we need machine learning to understand human behavior, because human behavior is so tricky that there cannot be a single model explaining everything. So far, hype. Reality is a bit different. Here's a very simple failure. So if you ask for how many R's there are in strawberry, by now it can do it. But then you ask for raspberry and it fails. So on the one hand, people tell you everything is super cool. We have superhuman reasoning capabilities. On the other hand, it fails there. But let's have a look at decent issues. So if you ask for coding examples, so I don't know how much you have read, but people tell you coding is over. Don't become a programmer. But then you check some of the examples. If you have an error already in the prompt part that you start with, it doesn't correct it. It actually introduces more errors. If you analyze what code has been produced, much of the code is wrong, might be insecure. You can go over to robotics, and even there, at least currently, maybe it changes, but currently it still struggles to deal with quite a lot of complexity in the real world. And why is that the case? If you look at planning, so planning in AI means you want to get a sequence of actions to achieve a goal. So here's a very simple example. You would like to go from this configuration into that configuration. So the block A should all of a sudden be on top of everything and be in between of A and C. And the instruction tells you can only move one block at a time. What is GPT-4o giving you as a plan? Perfect, sure. Let me move Z down on the floor. Then I move A on top of B. So far, so good. And then I move B on top of C. You achieved the goal, but you moved 2 boxes at one time. So if it's so smart that it ignores the specification, it's interesting, right? It's maybe something what will happen to you in a master thesis, and then you prove to be really smart because you ignore the bullshit specification I was giving you. But in a secured setting, maybe it's not good, right? It's something to balance. So something goes really wrong, and here's Sora, also from OpenAI, trying to solve the same task in a more magic way, right? Pretty amazing. It can change color, can get new blocks out of nothing. But interestingly, again, it reached a goal configuration, but in a weird way. Now going back to humans, to the two of us in a sense, right? So even there, as said, people say now, no, we have to do the same. Just collect data, learn some machine learning, and it's all done. Here in Darmstadt, we have great colleagues in cognitive science, computational cognitive science, that try to understand, is that doable, that may come up with their own models. And so here is one thing we did. There's a very interesting work published in Science arguing that's exactly what we should do for economic decisions. And Frankfurt is around the corner. Collect data, just data of input, output behavior. Output is, I don't know, buy stock, sell stock, whatever. And that's it. And they claim they got better by just having a neural network. But that's a bit weird, because here you see Karl Popper Karl Popper is one of the greatest science philosophers, and he argued that you can only do research if you have a hypothesis. It's not just collecting data and then truth pops out of nothing. And at least I am very much with him, and we were able to show that that also doesn't work for the paper there, and there's a strong so-called data set bias in there, and they did something wrong in the evaluation. So what we strongly believe in Darmstadt is it's all cool. We are part of the crowd of, yeah, size matters, but the bigger the better in the long term is wrong. Because we may run out of data, because we have knowledge, we want to put into the systems many, many reasons. And by now, I'm very happy that many of our colleagues have joined. So Jan Lecoeur, Turing Awardee and Senior Vice President at Meta for AI agreed. Ilya is agreeing on it. Alexander Wang, you can think about his political, anyhow, many people actually agree. And we believe something has to change. And what has to change is that we don't want to just have one approach, deep learning, plus a lot of data, but we would like to make use of all the different algorithms that exist and want to make sure that you can combine them as you need it. Maybe even a system is automatically combining them, but that way you can introduce expert knowledge and also make, hopefully, some of the system more safe. And that also resonates with what is hypothesized, how it runs in the human brain, and it's called the System 1, System 2 dual theory, dual process theory of Daniel Kahneman, who died unfortunately last year. And so we made progress there. Here's, for example, a very well-known example. It got even featured in Nature by saying you can play arcade games, like here Atari. So there's a little submarine and you have to shoot the sharks, and you have to collect. You can't see them easily. There are some blue scuba divers here. Scuba divers, sorry, and you have to collect them. But if you use a deep network that is just taking the whole image and tries to predict what is the bad action, it forgets about the semantics of this one here, so that you run out of oxygen. So once in a while, you should take some breath. Now, what we can do is we can try, just a second, we can try and put together Daniel Kahneman's idea of providing a bit of knowledge of the game and a bit of pixel-based learning, and then all of a sudden, it starts doing that. At some point, it starts learning, oh, damn it, I'm running out of oxygen. I should take a breath again, getting new oxygen, and then keep going. Yeah? Because you die. Yeah, but that's the point. How do you put a value function of oxygen into a system that can only talk about pixels? If you tell me that, we should write a paper. We should anyhow write a paper, but then, so that's the tricky part, right? You would say, check there, but what does it mean? Yeah, so we can do that. And that is maybe more interesting if you go for something that is called the AI Act by now. And in the EU, we have to tell how we train our models. We have to report the type of data we are using. And numerous papers have proven the bullshit in our data sets is large. So there's a lot of nude people, there's a lot of harm in there, there are dead people, there is a lot of crazy stuff in there. So our idea is, can we automate that? And there's a system. So here is one of the images you may have seen last year from, I don't know whether Elon Musk produced it, but at least his system Croc. And he was so happy that you can produce these systems, these images that doesn't matter at all. They don't care. They produce whatever you want. And so here you see then a system, a person with a gun, with a lot, we blurred it here, right? With a lot of dead bodies. And so in the EU, at some point you have to provide a data audit for that automatically. Now you could say, who can have a look at 5 billion images? No one. So we developed the system that is producing that automatically, given some information that we provide, and it tells you then it's unsafe because it is the misuse of weapons, and it gives you also a rationale, namely that the image shows a figure holding a gun in his hands, the content is not in a legal safe context as it's used in a classroom with children lying on the floor suggesting a violent blah, 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 blah. So that is done automatically. Definitely also not perfect, for sure. But at least we help, hopefully, in the long run, making the system safer. So with that, I would love to conclude. And what is the best is by just concluding, you're at the right place at the right time. So I think AI in Darmstadt is pretty strong, pretty good. We are investing quite a lot. We got a lot of new great colleagues. Some are only here for 20% moving over the time or increasing over time to 100%. So MT is coming from Tokyo, Japan. Charlie Wu just accepted coming from Tübingen. Simone is a great young person on computer vision. So we are constantly growing through what we call Hessian AI. It's a joint research center across different universities, all Hessian universities actually. And we are also part of an AI factory. I don't know whether you have heard of AI factories, but this is the way of the European Union to push compute infrastructure and services into industry. And we also hope, of course, into schools and research. And so maybe we also will be part of a gigafactory. So then this will be something like 100,000 GPUs that we can make use of. So anyhow, I welcome you. I hope really you will enjoy your studies here. You're at a good place. There are many other good places as well, but Darmstadt is pretty special. So enjoy it.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any further questions? All right, yeah, so if you are interested in AI and still looking for courses to attend next semester, I believe you teach data mining, machine learning.
Yeah.
And also irgendwas
deep learning.
Deep learning. So there are two lectures from Professor Kersting. One, the data mining, I attended and can highly recommend. And we will immediately continue with our next guest, Dr. Thorsten May from the Fraunhofer IGD, which is one of the associated institutes here at TU Darmstadt. Genau, welcome.
Check. Oh ja. Bin ich wahrscheinlich zu laut. Hello. Good. Hello, welcome to my talk. I'm Torsten May from the Fraunhofer IGD, Institute for Computer Graphics. I'm happy to see on the previous talk that computer visualistic is one of the topics the informatics is famous for, so nice. I remember one sentence from the last talk. I remember many more. There's one that went right into my mind. It says, as soon as we have sufficient data, the data speaks for themselves. Professor Kirsting is not here anymore, but I object. The data doesn't speak, it babbles. And my talk is about making the data speak, so to say. So this is what I'm talking about, everything that is about visualization of complex data. And I start with a slide about what I'm here. This is a collage made by my colleague from lots of dashboards, visualization techniques, from project results, from previous projects from the past 10 to 20 years, I guess, from very different fields of application, including medicine, including engineering, including computer science, software analysis, software security analysis, and so on. And as you might guess, we are usually not hired to build bar charts. Building bar charts is easy. As soon as you know that a bar chart does the job, the most important and the most difficult part of the job has already been done. It's a bunch of rectangles, so not a problem. But knowing that a bar chart is the right thing to do, or how the bar chart interacts with what you actually want to achieve, that's the difficult part, and that's what we are actually doing there. And this is, of course, some of those visualizations already include some bar charts, not a problem. I'm not sure if there are pie charts involved as well, but I hope not. And yeah, building them as soon, not a problem, but understanding what the users want to achieve is actually the problem. I want to highlight at least two of those problems in the first part of the talk, then I want to briefly go over some projects, project videos, some bragging slides, and I want to basically introduce what we are actually doing for the students in our courses. So, why you should listen? Because you are probably will be using visualization at one point or the other in your life. Using means reading visualization. At one point, it might get to be more complex than a bar chart is. And it might become relevant in your thesis, if it not already has. You might make evaluations and statistics, and you want to get a message across. And getting a message across is all that matters here with all that I'm talking about. As I said before, you do not want the data to babble. You want the data to speak for you, for your argumentation. This is what I'm teaching. And it's also relevant, of course, in any presentation you make. And most presentations are based on some facts that you aggregate and to collect to make a point across in reports, and of course, in your daily use, of course, and in understanding news. I made an analysis of all the Corona dashboards 5 years ago or so, more than 5 years, roughly 5 years ago. And there were a huge bunch of them, 300, 400. And most of them were ugly. Most of them were bad. But there are a few good examples that actually was nice to see. Oh, of course, the content was not really nice, but they at least were nice to see and nice to look at. And they got quite a complex message across. And that's nice. So, I want to test you at the beginning of my talk, because to get my point across, why visualization design is more difficult than putting some rectangles on the screen as you might need for a bar chart. Visualization design matters because you have an audience. Sometimes the audience is you. Sometimes you make visualizations for yourself and you do an analysis and want to understand your data. Yeah, you use that visualization for exploring things or to actually control if your AI method is doing what you're supposed to do. And there's things your user's brain are really good at. For example, finding patterns. And there are some things the user's brains are absolutely bad at. And I always stumble upon designs in the wild that demand counting, that demand remembering, that demand even calculating things. And this is what I'm speaking about, what we as humans are really bad at. And I want to start with a small test here. And the test is simply count the light blue circle on the next slide. Or try. Just try. How many did you see? I didn't say it was easy. How many did you see? One? Who's for one? Who saw two? Who's sure about how many? Where? Nobody's sure? Okay. We'll repeat that again. This time it's probably a bit easier. A bit. Oh, I'm happy the timing worked. How many did you see? Two. Who saw three? Who is quite sure that the number is correct? At least a few people. Yeah, okay, that's probably matches theory. Just to overview. The point is, your brain does in every second of your life pretty amazing things, and we want to use those things when designing visualization. Your brain dissects everything you see into segments. Not for visualizations, of course. It does so to avoid you bumping into things quite easily. It does so for you to recognize faces, which is arguably the most important thing that your vision does. And of course, with every segment of an image comes a rule. You do not know the rule, but there is a rule. And you might see on the top right corner what those rules might be. Yeah, it might be dark blue, it might be squares. Yeah, and of course, with every rule, there's an outlier. And the awesome thing about this, up to this point, your brain doesn't disturb you thinking. Basically, it does so automatically because this is a baseline process. We already heard about something like that in the previous talk. And then again, if there is an outlier, because an outlier means usually something interesting or even dangerous, it informs you about that. And this is what you might recognize. This is what makes this thing a tad bit easier for you to see. And this is, of course, one example. There are hundreds of examples like this, which are based on how we understand vision and how vision works. And we want to exploit that, of course. Yeah. And to summarize that is, yeah, why is this relevant? Because bad design hurts. And the tragic of our work is actually, you might have been using the worst visualization ever for years. And you might not even complain about this, because the most important mechanism is in your brain, which is absolutely eager to adapt to any tool that does not fit your job. Yeah? Your brain is doing the complementary work. And just if you're asking why I have this example on the right side, this is some kind of vision experiment. And if, in case you're wondering what this is about, the center tiles, the brown tiles, are the same color. There is some kind of dark brown tile at the top and light brown at the front, but there's actually the same color. Yeah? This is some kind of things where 3D visualization or 3D image reconstruction happening in your brain does interfere with what we are doing in visualization. And there is, as I said, some things that your brain is really not good at, which is counting, which is remembering, which is paying attention. This is not really good. Yeah. And we want to complement that with visualization. We want to exploit the good sides of what our brain is doing. So that's one point. This is basically things that mostly apply to most humans. Yeah, there are some differences, especially when it comes to red and green vision, but these rules basically apply to all people. But there is another rule adding to the complexity of visualization design, because we are not only interested what people can do well, we are interested what people want to do. And there's always a problem in any visualization project when people approach us and tell us, show us our data. Of course we can, that's not a problem. I can make bar charts for you, no problem. There is a difference. I want to know what you want to achieve. Why is your boss reserving budget for me, the visualization designer, for helping me doing your job? And there is a simple example I have here. These are basically 3 visualizations. One might argue if the left one is actually visualization, but don't mind about that too much. They're showing the same data. It's some sales numbers. That's not relevant here. Yeah, it's 3 charts, it's 3 jobs, but it shows the same data, which is an example of why it's not simply about showing data, because yeah, you can do that. And just to give you an impression of what the difference is, it's subtle. Yeah, yeah. It's about the left chart is, yeah, it's like a math exercise. You are being given a country and you want the sales numbers. And the easiest thing is, of course, simply looking them up. And to make this even more easy, you sort them alphabetically. Yeah, it would be even more easy if you simply have to type in the name in a search field, but that's not the point here. The other one is the other way around. You are more interested in high sales or low sales or a comparison of sales, not are being given a country first, but you are arranging the thing by sales numbers, and you have been arranging these by the size, and you can look up the numbers then, because they are the result of your task. And then again, on the right side, yeah, this is also subtle. But if you know your customer or your user is the sales manager France, you are likely going to know that the first thing he wants to know is where France is. Don't imagine the simple bar chart here. Imagine a huge dashboard or whatever he's using when he's logging in a screen at the morning. And I say, okay, this is France, this is where I connect to. So there is another thing is about arguing with visualization or something, getting a point across with visualization from the wild. This is an example I encountered roughly 10 years ago. This topic appears yearly, the gender pay gap. This is a chart below an article on Spiegel Online. The article was nice, made a point across, and there's a number of problems with the topic, but there is also a number of problems with the design. And I got angry about the design, not the topic as well, which is kind of odd, but this is what you're doing, visualizations for 20 years. My problem is you're not comparing professions. That you have different wages and different professions is not really surprising. You want to compare wages. And again, this is subtle. And you need to be aware of the possibility to redesign. Yeah, and this is a matter of experience, of course. And if you want to compare things and want to emphasize comparison, you need to bring things together as close as possible. This is how our brain is tuned to comparisons. And then you can say, okay, the most important comparison is probably between genders. And then you might bring genders together. This is, again, some subtle design issue. And again, why is this relevant? Of course, getting some point across, getting some message across. This applies to presentations as well as analysis. Yeah, because you have so many possibilities. And some designs are good. Some designs at least don't hurt much. It's okay. And most designs are at least not helpful or leave a lot of room of improvement. Yeah. It's about, as I said in the complementary slide before, using visualization is work. And if you're working, it should have a result. And the question, what is the result of looking at this chart, is incredibly difficult even for me to answer after some decades of research. And this is at least an important question because it anchors what the qualities of your design are. To summarize that, understand what your brain is good at, understand what your customer or user wants to do, and something I missed today, of course, is understanding what your data is about. Yeah, and there is some secret ingredient, and you usually know when the secret ingredient is missing. Is this one: have something to tell or something to ask. If you don't have that, you're wasting time. This is an advice I might give you that transcends everything, every discipline. Okay, some example projects that we are doing might be getting a glimpse of interaction. Get a bit briefly. Yeah, this is an example project that we are using to analyze log data from routers, getting the headers, getting the payloads. We want to understand how the AI does a classification on probably dangerous intrusions into a company network. And we want to understand how to improve such messages. Because, yeah, okay, AI doesn't fall from the sky, that we heard in the last talk. It needs to be built. And if something needs to be built, it can be built well, and it can be built not so well. And we want to understand what actually the things are, the leverage points to improve that design. Yeah, as you might see here, most visualization projects I talk about are about interaction, because it's about where the user steps in to do decisions and to improve his understanding on what the data is about. From cybersecurity, we're going to medicine. This is about a visualization of patient cohorts. Cohorts are similar patients, which are similar enough to warrant a similar treatment. And doctors want to understand what differentiates patient groups, because they need to be treated differently, because that's basically the core of personalized medicine. And we usually have hundreds, even thousands of attributes, including time series, that require us to consider what similarity means and what not similarity means, which is kind of difficult for us, and it's of course also difficult for the doctors. To get an overview over this is usually what we are hired for. And then again, exploding the problem of multidimensional visualization, which is actually a kind of big thing to do. There is usually not too many good solutions for the problem to show 10 dimensions, 20 dimensions, 100 dimensions of data, but you try to tackle it. And in this case, for the optimization of engines, yeah, which are based on multi-parameter optimization, all are dependent, and you need to understand the dependency to find the good solutions. Now to something completely different, what we are actually doing in the course. The design space, as I said before, is huge. It's some visualizations, it's some mappings, it's interaction, it's layout and design and data pre-processing. And you all combine that. And the fun thing is you might technically combine anything of that without hurting. Most designs will fail, of course. But to understand this design space, we are practicing something like that in the lectures and courses. And speaking of them, this is my closing slide, is what we're actually doing. We have 2 lectures. One is basically the core of the information visualization and visual analytics part, which is in every winter semester. In the summer semester, we have the user-centered design, which is, as the name implies, more towards the user side of user interface design. These courses do not teach you to actually build those visualizations. This is what the practicum is about. Yeah. And of course, we also have a seminar where you get some encountering some scientific work and to get to understand how scientific papers are read. That's for me. I hope now you know how you get the data to speak. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. And we'd do a flying change and come to our last talk of the day, which is Nils Rolzhausen, who's doing his PhD at SEMO, which is the Secure Engineering Mobile Lab. So it's IT security area. Genau.
Soll das sein? Okay, mic check, mic check. Amazing. I never broke a Beamer setup quite this badly, so this is exciting for me as well. Yeah, hi, my name is Niels. I work at CMO. We do secure mobile networking over there. We do a lot of different courses, labs, seminars, so we'll probably meet again at some point in the future. And I think this talk is going to be a bit different to the ones you've just heard in that I don't want to talk a lot of generics. I really want to zoom in with you and give you one example of what we do and specifically what I do day to day. And that is called WatchWitch. This is originally a project that has come out of my master's thesis. So I think it could also be a fun thing for you to see as like an example of what maybe in a couple years you are going to do in your master's thesis. And what this is about specifically is taking a very deep look at the Apple Watch and looking at how it works, why it works, and if it is secure, and what kind of fun things we can do with it. Now, the Apple Watch specifically, I think is very interesting just because of how ubiquitous it is. So Apple alone is manufacturing about 50 million of these devices every year. And I'm sure a lot of you in the auditorium right now are wearing one. And if you maybe pay attention to that on your way home today, I'm sure you'll see lots of Apple Watches on the wrists of the people around you. And while these watches are on our wrists pretty much 24/7, maybe even as you sleep, if you want to use sleep tracking, they are collecting a lot of data about you, and very intimate data at that. So a modern Apple Watch usually has different heart rate sensors. It can take electrocardiograms. It can also measure your skin temperature, which can be used as a proxy to determine menstruation cycles and predict ovulation times, and in turn also detect pregnancies. So this is clearly very sensitive, very intimate data that we want to secure. But it's not just sensitive and it's not just intimate, it's also increasingly political. Because exactly this data that is collected on exactly these devices is already being used in the UK, for example, to prosecute unlawful abortions. And even if for some of you, maybe that's not part of your threat model, right? Some of you might not be worried about the police confiscating your watch and using the data on it against you. Even if that's not part of your concerns, you still have to trust the manufacturer of this device to keep your data safe and to be responsible with that. And that's also often an open question, because in the case of Fitbit, which is now part of Google, they have already publicly stated that they would share sensitive health information of their users with law enforcement or with governments if they are requested to do so. And once again, even if that is not one of your concerns, right? You have nothing to hide, you trust the government, you trust your manufacturer. Even then, way too often it happens that still your private health data ends up publicly exposed online in some data breach, in this case also including fitness data from Apple Watches being leaked over some third party that you shared your data with. So all of this, I think, shows that we are really due for a paradigm shift in this ecosystem. And I think it's really time to think about how we can use these devices that collect so much data about us in a way that respects our privacy and that gives us back control over our data. Because currently, if you buy a smartwatch, pretty much any smartwatch, especially an Apple Watch, you are also buying into a walled garden. into an ecosystem that places very strict limitations on what you can and cannot do with your device. For example, with your Apple Watch, you basically agree that you will only use this device using Apple's hardware, using Apple's software, and using Apple's cloud services. There's very little room for choice there. You can't choose which vendor or manufacturer or cloud provider you want to trust or which you want to avoid. And especially, you will never be able to use your Apple Watch with an Android phone. That's just not possible, and that also creates a vendor lock-in effect, so that once you bought this expensive watch, you will also keep using an iPhone and you won't switch to Android. Now, this is something that not only concerns me, but there's lots of people noticing this and thinking about this also in politics. This, for example, is an antitrust complaint from the United States from earlier, I think the beginning of last year, where they accuse Apple of a lot of these things. I hope you can read it from back there, but there's some statements there that basically Apple deliberately compromises security of their users when it is in their interest to do so, to create this vendor lock-in effect. And then at other times, they use security as kind of a defense statement to say, oh no, we can't offer interoperability. We can't make this work with Android. You have to stay in our nice, secure walled garden. In response to this antitrust complaint, there was actually a very interesting headline where Apple issued a statement saying that they tried really, really hard, actually, to make the Apple Watch compatible with Android phones. And they spent 3 years researching that with all their engineers. And in the end, they just came to the conclusion that it couldn't be done, right? It's just technically infeasible. We can't do it. We have to stay in this walled garden. And when I read that, I thought that was kind of curious, because when I read that earlier last year, I was sitting there with a working Android implementation that can talk to the Apple Watch. That's what I did for my master's thesis. That's Watch, which is an Android app that allows you to use core smart grid features of your Apple Watch with an Android device, kind of trying to show that what Apple said there in this headline is not true, and that we can have more control over our data, that we can have privacy on our own terms, and that we can use our own implementations and software stacks with these devices. Now, behind this app that at a first glance maybe doesn't look like much, there's a ton of protocol analysis, of reverse engineering, of re-implementation, and also of cryptography. That's all areas of computer science that you will probably learn about in your coming years here, and techniques that you'll be taught by the many talented people doing teaching here. And then in the end, you have something that looks like this. And maybe to illustrate how that process to get there looks like, we are starting from a very chaotic base state where we have very little information. And we are trying to divine some sort of information from this black box device and understand how it works and if it is secure and maybe how we can exploit it. So your base state might look something like this. I think there's a point to be made about data visualization there as well. This is just a Bluetooth log. This is just all the bytes that the Apple Watch sends to the iPhone and the iPhone sends back over Bluetooth. And now if you just stare at that for long enough, you can start noticing some structures. For example, that there seems to be like a type byte in the beginning, and then the following bytes often encode the length of the rest of the packet. And so you can kind of start peeling back these layers, investigating also the binaries that are used to parse these protocols, and then kind of iteratively refine your understanding of the system and work your way up these many protocols that are layered on top of each other to make the Apple Watch work. So again, one layer higher, we identify some sort of structure, and then we can decode that as well and kind of do that until we have an understanding of the system, which looks like this. So we have the Apple Watch on the one side, the iPhone on the other, and it turns out that to communicate, they are essentially forming a virtual private network, like a VPN tunnel between the two devices that makes sure that all of the data that is being sent back and forth is encrypted and authenticated and secure and nice. And the cool thing is that nobody ever knew this before, right? At least no one who didn't sign an NDA at Apple that doesn't allow them to talk about it. So now we understand how this works. And that means that we can also try to understand how we can break it and what the security properties of the system are. And if I would have had my usual laptop, I would have known how I'm doing on time. I'm fine. Okay, then I'll try to walk you through one example of a security vulnerability that I found in the system. I'm trying to be quick about this. There's a lot of context there. It's not really important for you. But to establish this encrypted tunnel that carries all of the traffic between the two devices, Apple uses a protocol that's called IKEv2. That's a standard protocol that's well understood. We have open standards. We can read up how it works. IKEv2 is a key exchange protocol. So by definition, we kind of start in a state where we have no shared key material between the two devices. So we can't encrypt anything because we can't agree on what key to use to encrypt. So IKEv2, by necessity, starts out in a state where we can't encrypt or authenticate anything, and then we kind of bootstrap from there and exchange keys, and at the end, everything is encrypted. Now, IKEv2 has these notify payloads that allows vendors like Apple to extend and customize the protocol. And I have brought some of them for you here. These are custom notify payloads that Apple uses. So these are also reverse engineered. Nobody knew about them. And it turns out that the Wi-Fi discovery mechanism of the watch, so basically what allows the watch to stay connected to your phone even if you're far apart but still in the same Wi-Fi network. That mechanism is implemented entirely over these notify payloads. So every time your phone and your watch connect, they basically say, hey, my local IP address is this, by the way. So if you lose connection, just reach me there. And now if you take a really close look at the definition from the standard up there, we can see that, at least from what the standard intended, these notify payloads can appear anywhere in this entire protocol. Connect that to what I explained earlier, that the first messages are always unencrypted. That means that this payload that tells the watch or the phone, hey, reach me at this IP address, could technically also appear in a context where we have no authentication, no encryption at all. And if we try that in practice, we can see that this actually works for some versions of iOS. So we can let the phone and the watch connect, and then as a network attacker, just swap out one of the packets. They usually send like a heartbeat, and we swap that out with an unencrypted packet that contains this Wi-Fi IP address update, and we say, okay, actually, I'm now at this IP address that belongs to some device that we control. And then when we, I don't know, wrap one device in tin foil or something so they lose connection over Bluetooth, the other device will actually reach out to this IP address that we control without any authentication or encryption mechanism preventing us from manipulating or jamming this discovery mechanism. So that's kind of cool. That feels like a vulnerability. Which means that we should also disclose it to Apple. That's very important. Always stay ethical, kids. Share your vulnerabilities. Apple is very nice about that. But yeah, that's basically all it takes to find a vulnerability in iOS and macOS and whatever. It's sometimes not that difficult, and it could happen to you. Right, but before we took this little excursion into security, we were talking about the Android re-implementation, of which I would love to show you a video. Maybe we can do that after the talk, trying again to switch the laptops, but for now I think I can't do it. So this is where the demo would be. you can see that the Android app supports receiving all the health data that your watch collects. And there's some like electrocardiograms being displayed there. You can see GPS tracks of your bike exercise that you maybe did. So there's really a lot of features that we can use on our own terms with this Android implementation without sending any data to Apple's servers at all, like completely offline, completely running our own software and a software stack that we control from the bottom up. And I think that's pretty cool. And giving a bit of context, maybe also something for you to take home, I think it's also always really important to keep in mind why you are doing things. Because you will be learning skills here that can be kind of dangerous in the wrong hands. So always take a step back and think about why we are doing this. What is our goal? Are we doing good or are we doing evil? And in this case, I think the very cool things that we can achieve here are that we can improve privacy, because it turns out that the Apple Watch shares the internet connection of your iPhone. So every connection your watch makes goes to your iPhone first. And if we control the phone, the Android phone in this case, we can actually make decisions about which connections we want to allow and which we want to block. So using WatchWitch, I can say, okay, you are allowed to contact the weather API, so my weather app works. But at the same time, I can disable all of Apple's logging or tracking servers or diagnostic servers. So my watch can really only talk to the weather API or whatever other service I want to allow. Then, as we've seen previously, we can also improve security by deeply understanding these systems and looking at how they can break, how they can fail. We can allow Apple to patch these vulnerabilities and to improve security for every single one who uses an Apple Watch or an iPhone, regardless of if they are using our software or not. And then finally, we can also improve autonomy. We can give users back control over their data. We can show users their health data in more detail than Apple allows them to. We can allow them to run like raw database queries on this data. And we can allow them to do that without ever making a network connection, keeping your data entirely offline, encrypted on your phone that you control. I think that's very cool. And that's also perhaps a more hopeful vision for a future than what we are usually seeing on the news these days. I think it's very important to focus on that. Then, if you saw this and thought it looked kind of cool and would be a nice skill to have, we are actually teaching this, not this semester, but next semester. We are offering the reverse engineering lab, where we teach you how to do reverse engineering like that and to analyze real-world mobile applications for security issues, for privacy issues, or just for fun, honestly. Right, that's it. I can try if I can maybe show you the demo video, but for now, this is all. If you have questions, I am happy to take them.
Are there any questions regarding the talk?
Yeah. Do we offer what for the network? Do we offer what for the network? I didn't get all of your question, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, okay. Sure, no demo. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
Now, if you're interested, I'll say some things, and afterwards you can come to the front to see the demo. I'll quickly walk over here. This is so far for the talks today, but there are still a couple of things I'd like to tell you for tomorrow. First, Tomorrow we will be in C110, which is one of the smaller lecture halls downstairs, also with better audio, because this is required. This room is required for an exam. So please do not come here, because there will probably be people here writing an exam. Then tomorrow morning at 9:30, or I'll start differently. There are a couple of accounts which are recommended while you are studying here. For example, the HZ account, which is required for Wi-Fi or other accounts to print downstairs if you ever need this. If you haven't set them up yet, you can come to the C pool. This is where you got your name tags tomorrow morning. This morning, you can come there tomorrow morning at 9:30, and there will be people there assisting you. And then the first talk tomorrow will be the IT system talks, if I remember correctly, about Toucan in Moodle, which is probably the most important talk of the Ophase, because Toucan, as Tim mentioned, is kind of a mess, but you desperately need it for studying. Genau, and now if you are still motivated, we'd like to invite you to the get-together, which is downstairs where the breakfast was today. And we will put out some snacks, after some time also some board games, and just to so you can get to know each other even further, which is also one of the main goals for the Ophase. And then in about 50 minutes, the city tour will start for those who are interested. Hopefully, the weather stays like this. And that's from my side. Thank you for attending today. Thank you to the stream. And come downstairs or take a look at the demo. A question. If you are downstairs at 4:30, you will notice when the city tour starts. Genau. All right. Goodbye.